God bless all of you out there with the Seattle Urban League. This is Reverend Dr. Leslie D. Braxton, Senior Pastor of the New Beginnings Christian Fellowship here in the city of Kent. I am privileged to be able to discuss with you, share some thoughts regarding the Juneteenth celebration 2020. Let me begin by saying, in the words of Charles Dickens in The Tale of Two Cities, these are the best of times and the worst of times, all at the same time. In a sense, it means the same, or is getting at the same, of what the ancient Chinese meant by the word crisis, which means opportunity in the presence of danger. It seems that in the wash cycle of life, the agitator is the most important factor to us coming out clean. And so our culture is going through agitation, it's going through upset, it is going through upheaval. It's going to a time of great challenge on its way, in my opinion, to making historic strides toward becoming a more perfect union, quiet as it's kept. We cannot make America great again if it has never been great for all of its citizens yet. Our challenge today is to become a more perfect union, more perfect for Blacks, more perfect for gays and lesbians, more perfect for immigrants who come to this country bringing energy and skills and new vitality, more perfect for workers who need to claim a larger share of the fruits of their own labors, more perfect for disabled persons who play a vital role also in making our society what it needs to be. And so I'm glad today, because I can see through the upheaval that something dynamic, something challenging, something God sent is happening in our society today. In a real sense, you see there is a collision between new streams of consciousness as manifested in the Me Too movement of a few years ago through today, and now in the Black Lives movement, which has become the shorthand slogan for all people in all places who are saying we are fed up with any and all forms of human oppression, misuse, and abuse. George Floyd has become a metaphor for people everywhere who've experienced other people's, other forces, facile forces of state and culture on their neck, making it hard for them to breathe, both literally in their encounters with the police, but also financially, also economically, also socially, also religiously. People are being choked out of their very real life possibilities by invisible forces who put glass ceilings on their lives and their hopes and their dreams, who handcuff them in the fight for a better life, and who hog-tie their feet before they even attempt to run the race. There are new streams of consciousness in these movements running up against relics from the past, such as this current presidential administration that dog whistles at racism. Here we are, think about it, as we move into this year's Juneteenth celebration, where we celebrate when slaves, the enslaved in Texas, received the news that they were free, June the 19th, 1865. That day that we celebrate every year is now being marred by an openly and brazenly racist president who chooses to have a public rally not only on the day, but in the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the worst race massacre in this nation's history took place 99 years ago on Labor Day weekend, May the 31st, June the 1st, 1921, when supposedly another case of when a white girl cries, a black man dies, a 19-year-old black boy, shoe shiner, who supposedly has assaulted a 17-year-old white woman who was an elevator operator. And then next thing you know, white mobs were gathering outside the courthouse where the young black man was being arraigned for his crime. And next thing you know, white mobs are moving through the city randomly attacking black people. And in the end, 35 full blocks called in the Glenwood district, the wealthiest black commercial district in the United States, called Black Wall Street. 500 individual black businesses were destroyed, never recovered, compensation never granted. Quiet as it's kept, 9/11 was not the first aerial terrorist attack in this nation's history. Tulsa was, because in that attack that went on for 2 days until the National Guard put it down, crop dusters were used to drop fertilizer bombs on the Glenwood district, killing persons and destroying property. An aerial terrorist attack, racist in nature. They deliberately went at the heart of the black economy. Thousands left Glenwood never to return. 300 black people were dead, 800 were admitted to local hospitals, and 10,000 black people were left homeless. 8,000 were interred for several days. We often talk about the Japanese internment during World War II, but we don't talk about the black internment in Tulsa for several weeks when black people were randomly held by the National Guard until they decided to set them free, most who would end up leaving the area. So on that day when we pause and mourn the lives lost and the ghosts of others who have come over that way that with tears has been watered, treading the path of the blood of the slaughter, this president so tone deaf, or maybe they actually hear the discord and the movements of jazz moving back and forth between the major and the minor chords. They hear the minor chord of melancholy over that day. And it is a deliberate frontal assault on the sacredness of that day, which arouses and excites a base who do not love this president despite his depravity, but because of it, and deliberately have a rally on a day that marks the greatest racial massacre in this nation's history. That is what we're dealing with today, in unmasked and unashamed, a belligerency of white supremacy. And if that's not bad enough, this same president has scheduled the day when he shall receive his party's nomination for his re-election to the presidency of the United States. He has scheduled it for August the 27th, which is exactly the day that will commemorate the Axe Saturday, which 57 years ago in the city of Jacksonville, Florida, where the rally is being held. Jacksonville, Florida, 57 years ago, when the Youth Council for the NAACP was holding a peaceful protest, sitting in at a lunch counter. They were spit upon by white customers. Very quickly, a crowd of over 200 angry white mobsters gathered, chased those black protesters down the street, and then after a while began randomly grabbing any and all black people, beat them with axe handles and with bats, till the majority of those protesters sought refuge in a local church. It's one of the saddest days in the history of the city of Jacksonville. It is not an accident that this president has chosen as the day to receive his party's nomination in the same city and on the same day where the Axe Saturday took place. Once again, the direct insult to the psyche of Black America and the arousal of race haters and white supremacists in this country. We have new streams of consciousness, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and others who are rising up, seeking to make this a more perfect union, coming into collision with relics from the past, who want to make America return to a former day where the horn of plenty and power and privilege was shared by a few at the expense of the many. And so here we are, moving into one of the great days on the national calendar, because Black history is America's history. It is a part of the tapestry of the total nation. And we move into it with a nation, in the words of the Apostle Paul, the whole nation is groaning like a mother giving birth. God is birthing something new. I believe in the God of history, the God of providence, who turns the wheels of justice that turn slow but grind ever so fine. I'm excited as someone who was born August the 2nd, 1961, exactly 2 days before Barack Hussein Obama, born August the 4th, 1961. It seems that the good Lord was in a good mood at the beginning of August in 1961, if you'll allow me just a moment of hubris. But having been born 59 years ago on my next birthday, I've literally lived from the days of Black Power to Black Lives Matter. And for the first time in my life, born in the advent of the modern day civil rights movement and up into this modern day, this is the first time where demonstrations for racial justice are being carried out by a majority of people who are not themselves Black. For too long, we have wondered when our lives would matter to anyone but us. We prayed the prayer and sang the song that we were way down yonder by ourselves. We marched with the peace demonstrators, but they didn't march with us in former days. We marched with the anti-war protesters, but they didn't march with us. We marched in the women's movement, the Susan B. Anthony's and others, but they didn't turn around and march with our sisters and to protect our brothers. We've marched for workers to get rights, and then we couldn't get into the same unions that we helped bring to pass. We fought for the right to fight for a nation that we loved, that didn't turn around and love us. We longed for the day when hurt and abuse would come our way and we would exercise our right to protest for right and find that others were standing around us because our Black lives mattered to more than just Black. And now, amazingly, in the wake of the death of George Floyd, my mama used to say, and grandmama used to say, that death comes in threes. After the death of Breonna Taylor, after the death of Ahmaud Arbery, finally, the most grotesque killing we've ever seen with our eyes, perhaps, a near 9-minute slow, excruciating, dripping away of a man's life, done so by someone commissioned to protect and to serve, who willfully, intentionally, casually, and capriciously, with his hands in his pockets, with complete impunity for the fact that this was a human being beneath the weight of his body, applied the pressure to take his life slowly, mercilessly. My brothers and my sisters, when I look to my right, the people marching don't look like me. And when I look to my left, the people marching don't look like me. In 21 different countries, people are holding signs saying Black Lives Matter. Tokyo, Japan, Oslo, Norway, Berlin, Germany, London, England, Sydney, Australia, Kenya, and so many, many more. Our struggle now has become shorthand for the struggle of people everywhere who have had their own experience with hurt and abuse, or are recognizing their privilege that came at the price of others' hurt and abuse, but are connecting for the first time with the humanity of others who don't look like them, but are the same as them. For we are all God's children. All of us are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, of which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness has been denied so many because of the complexion of their skin, or because of their sexual orientation, or because of their gender. So many are rising up at the almost ghostly call of the late Elijah Cummins, who kept saying to us, we're better than this. And for so long, so many deafened their ears and hardened their hearts. But now, all of these factors, perhaps COVID wore us down, perhaps being pent up inside gave us time to think, perhaps it is the aggregate impact of all of the deaths before us, going back past through Eric Gardner, Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till, to those who ran away on the Underground Railroad. All at once, it seems, the straw that broke the camel's back has happened. And people everywhere, for the sake of what is humane, and under the compulsion of their humanity, for the sake of other people's humanity, are saying enough. We want to be better than this. And so this year, Juneteenth, which historically looks backward on when the people in Texas received the news that the slaves were free, this year's Juneteenth celebration comes against the backdrop of a world saying, we must all be free of the white supremacy that has dominated the world for the last 500 years, falsely perching some up on a lie of white supremacy, falsely pressing others down under the weight of a false assumption of black and brown and yellow inferiority. Stripped away, we are all people who need to be able to live in a society that has been purged of any and all manifestations of racism, not just the conspicuous ones that you see in acts of police brutality, but the more nuanced ones and the more hidden and invisible ones that cause for inequitable outcomes in health and welfare systems, that come in inequitable outcomes in education, inequitable funding for school districts, which then lead to inequitable outcomes. When you have poorly funded schools, poorly paid teachers, inadequate and crumbling facilities, and set some people artificially on a failure track, whereas those in a more resource and rich environment are set upon artificially on a success track. We are better than this. And so today I believe that we must deliberately be about what Al Sharpton called the paradigm of protest and demonstration to legislation to reconciliation. From demonstration to legislation to reconciliation. And through our marching, we're gaining people's attention. Frederick Douglass, who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And so we make a demand. We get people's attention. And having made that demand must translate into legislation. Martin King once said, the law can't make you love me, but it can stop you from killing me. The law can't make you like me being on the job, but it can make sure that I am paid equitably and fairly and justly for my labors. And so we must move to pass the kind of policies and legislation, not just in law enforcement, but through labor, through society, through hiring, through admission policy, through allocation of resources. We must move from demonstration to legislation. Legislation that determines the behaviors that allow all of us to live safely and equitably in our society. And then reconciliation. We often hear it said, no justice, no peace. Because if society is not just and fair, there will be the constant cries for remedy of the ills that people suffer. We can only experience reconciliation, racial reconciliation, gender reconciliation, on a broader base of liberty, when we all sit together at the welcome table in a society that is more just and more fair. I think this year's Juneteenth celebration is more pregnant with possibility than Juneteenth celebration in previous years for a very, very, very long time, because God is right now before our very eyes, birthing something new. White people are saying, we are tired of racism. White people are saying, we are ready to put at risk our privilege accrued through centuries of injustice to others, that we believe we can have abundant life in a world where the game is not rigged, the deck is not stacked, where it is in fact fair and just. And that is the great awakening, the sleeping giant that had to come to pass before our society could become a more perfect union. So this year, instead of just barbecuing and instead of just playing our music, this year we stand together and listen to the drum beat of a majestic chorus of voices from bygone years who have been saying over and over again, I do believe we shall overcome. And when they said we, they weren't talking about just black. They're talking about red and yellow, black and white together. And more than we've ever been before, red and yellow, black and white are together, putting their lives and voices on the line, saying Black lives matter too. All lives do matter. Black lives matter. Because when Black lives matter, you better believe it, all lives matter. God bless you. May you have a blessed Juneteenth.
Hello, my name is Leslie Braxton, and I'm the senior pastor of the New Beginnings Christian Fellowship here in the city of Kent. And today I want to join my voice along with the countless others who are encouraging and imploring everyone out there to make sure you fill out your 2020 census form. Everybody counts. So many do not realize that public funding is distributed on the basis of the census. Who lives where, in what numbers, what schools get funding, what streets get repaired, what services are provided. And so I want to implore each of you, particularly people of faith out there, let's turn our faith into works and to make sure we do our civic duty to ensure that our neighborhoods have the resources that they need so that our children, our Black and brown children, have just as clean of streets, just as many community resources, just as many libraries, just as many public services to help them grow into their full potential as persons who grow up in more traditionally and historically resource-rich communities. So my brothers and my sisters, if you believe that you count, and I know that you do, please fill out that census form. Can we count on you?